Welcome back to my What's Wrong With Me series. Last time, over here in part one, I talked about some of the different things I've been dealing with in my body and my fitness, just in movement in general, and those things that are holding me back, kind of why I decided to start this journey of becoming a biomechanics specialist. And then I also talked about what are the things that I've been learning since I started that journey in that process. So today I'm going to be diving into my assessments, what I have learned about my body specifically, and just kind of seeing what's going on that's causing some of the issues that I've been having. And I'm also going to share some of my next steps, what I'm going to be doing to be working on those things. So this is the results of my assessments, and these are just all of the different assessments that I did. But what I really wanted to show you is this is what would be considered kind of full range of motion, and these are my results. You can see how far off I am from all of them. And I think that is just a super, super clear picture or very big indicator that my body is not where it needs to be and that there's something else going on. I've been working out for 5.5 years and I am not the best at making sure that I'm doing proper recovery. I will be the first to admit that. But this is not just a lack of stretching daily. This is more than that. And I have gone through periods in my life where I have done more stretching and I still don't necessarily see huge progress in my ranges of motion. And so I think from that, to me, it's been pretty clear that I am very locked up in my body, and also that it's not just I need to stretch more or even I need to do more mobility work. So the workouts that I've been doing, the P-Volve workouts, are absolutely amazing about functional fitness, about mobility, and all of that. And they help me to move so much better, especially in the sense of just feeling better. They're incredible for that. But when I'm assessing my range of motion cold, like it's not fully where it should be. And it's because there is something in the way, like holding me back. And so I can do as many functional fitness workouts as I want. I can do as much mobility work as I want. But if I'm not doing what my body needs, it's ultimately only going to get me so far. And so this just makes so much sense to me. It was exactly what I expected to see. And so it's been really cool to look through the specific numbers and figure out what's going on for me. So the first thing that I noticed, and I want to show you a picture of my posture. I'm going to be honest, this is a little bit vulnerable for me to share because I'm not where I want to be right now with my weight, and where I thought I would be at this point postpartum. But it has been quite a journey doing this whole weight loss process again with two kids. So I just want to give that disclaimer before I share. Please be kind. Um, okay, so this is a posture analysis, an app that I'm able to use with this course. And it's so interesting to me looking at this picture because it shows this yellow line is supposed to be like the midline of the body. So you can see I am visibly shifted. My weight is shifted to my left. That is something I had never noticed before, but it's very, very common to see people that are kind of leaning in one direction and kind of twisted in one direction. And it would make sense that there's a shift of weight because of that. But for me, it's actually almost opposite. So you can kind of see my right shoulder is kind of down a little bit. My right hip is up just a tad. It's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but you can kind of see on my right side how my leggings and my bra are just a little bit closer together. So my right hip is up just a little, right shoulder is down, and you can kind of see a little bit in this picture. I feel like that my left shoulder is pushed a little bit more forward. I'm rotated a bit to the right. And so when that happens, when you're rotated to the right and you're twisted that direction, you're kind of leaning that direction, it would make sense that your weight would be kind of more to the right, right? So that's kind of more what I expected to see when I'm looking at these tilts and stuff. But I'm actually have my weight going to the left. But that also kind of makes sense because my head also tilts to the right. So with this kind of pattern where you're leaning to the right, your weight's kind of going right, you're kind of twisted right, normally your head would tilt to the left to kind of counteract that, right? So for me, my head's still tilting right, my whole body is kind of tilting twisted right, but my weight is going to the left to kind of help counteract that. So that was super interesting to look at. And I don't have the side profile here, but when I took the side profile, you could tell that I am in an anterior pelvic tilt, which means that my pelvis, if you look at it like a bucket, it's tilted forward. And so that causes my lower back to kind of curve a bit more. And it also can cause your chest to kind of stick out. This is a very common thing for most people. Most people tend to be in one of two postures, either that anterior pelvic tilt, kind of throwing the upper body forward a bit, or a sway back where the pelvis is very much tipped kind of under. It's the opposite direction. And then a lot of times what happens with that is you get this like tightness in the front where your shoulders kind of start to round and you're just kind of like sinking down, and it kind of causes your belly to pooch out. And so that's the sway back posture. You kind of lose a lot of the curves in your spine, whereas the anterior pelvic tilt, you kind of get like extra curves. And so like for me, you see my head come forward quite a bit. And so that's kind of the posture that we're looking at there. And so when I look at the posture that I'm seeing, when I look at my assessments, the very important, like the most important thing is to restore just some movement. I'm very locked up, right, um, in my measurements, and a lot of that comes from like the biggest muscles in the body, the ones that are closer to the surface, that we can. If we can get some movement going there, if we can get them loosened up, then we can start to address the twisting and the leaning and those kinds of things that are more uh, unilateral versus bilateral, meaning one side of the body instead of both sides. So first we're going to address both sides, like everything, and get me moving better, get me breathing better, and then we can start to address some of that like twisting and side to side stuff. So the interesting thing about this, when we're looking at this, and we're looking at trying to get to the root of the problem, it can be so difficult because your body is twisting in these different directions, it's leaning in these different directions, and it has to figure out ways to still be able to move, right? To still be able to move as if there's nothing going on, to still be able to move through normal movement patterns. And so as your body's trying to figure out how to do this, it's going to compensate in different ways. And I talked about this a bit in the last part, but that means when we're trying to figure out the root of the problem, it could be we have to kind of peel back all of these different layers to really figure out what's going on. And a lot of times it can come from one of two different directions. It can come from your feet. If there's something weird going on with your feet, with the way you walk, that can have results all the way up what we call the chain, like the kinetic chain up your body. And so you can see problems at your knees, at your hips, at your rib cage, at your shoulders, at your neck and head, and it can be a ripple effect all the way up. Or the other thing that a lot of times can happen is you have either issues with your head or neck, or so much of the time it can be a breathing issue. You are struggling to get air in, and so you're trying to figure out ways to breathe better because your ribs should expand 360 degrees whenever you're breathing. You should have expansion in the front, sides, and back. It should be moving in all directions. And so if your rib cage is compressed in any direction and you're not able to get air there, then your body has to like try to figure out how to get more air in. And so it can kind of come from either direction, and there are a lot of different factors there. But what's interesting is I have factors for both. And so when I was young, I had adenoids blocking my airway until they were removed, and so I couldn't breathe through my nose at all. And so that was definitely a factor. I had braces and expanders and like things moving my jaw. I had all kinds of stuff going on for about 6 years. And so I had a lot going on with my head and neck and jaw area. And that can have so much to do with the breathing and with the neck placement and just all of those kinds of things. So that's definitely something to consider. But I also had an injury on my left toe, which kept me from being able to push off of my foot. My big toe would not fully flex. It couldn't fully, I couldn't pull it back all the way, and so I couldn't push off the floor. Um, and so that was several months of recovery, and my foot still felt very, it's a weird way to describe it, but like unsafe. Like I didn't like putting weight or pressure there. And so it's kind of interesting that now I'm shifted to the left, right? Like my weight is kind of sitting on my left. But it's just so interesting how these things can affect each other. And so the important thing is not necessarily looking at all of these factors and saying, okay, it was this issue that I had when I was young that caused this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this to happen. It's not so much about understanding the chronology through time as just taking a look and taking all of those factors together to understand, okay, so there could be something going on with my airway. There could be something going on with my head or neck. There could be something going on with my feet, and like understanding just what are the different things we can use to address those types of issues. But more than anything, we're going to look at my assessments and use those to determine what we need to do to move forward. So the super cool thing about this process is these assessments, like you literally look at what your body can do, you try an exercise, and then you go back and see if that helped. See if you can move better after that. You assess it like just very, very objectively. We're going to look at these numbers, figure out what they mean, and we're going to try something, and then we're going to go back and see if that helped. If that helped, then we're going to continue to do that exercise. If it didn't help, then we're going to choose a different one. And so I love that about this process, that it's very much based on what you just get to see immediately what's actually working and just do more of that. And then you can build on that as you begin to see these things improve over time. So at first they're not going to, these exercises aren't going to last for an extended period, but the more that I do them, the more that they will. And so my body will begin to understand that it's safe, understand that this is a safe position to be in, and continue to begin adjusting more and more towards carrying itself there for a longer period of time, if that makes sense, so that I can more live in those positions that I want to be in. Another thing that I've been learning about is grounding, and I don't want to go into this too much because, for one, it's kind of a difficult concept, but it's also a very difficult concept for my body. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Grounding is the ability to kind of push into the ground as the ground is pushing back at you is kind of the definition. And so it's about sensing your force into the ground, which makes sense. You would think probably that corresponds to where your weight is sitting, right? But according to my assessments, I am maybe just a tiny bit more grounded on my right foot than on my left. So my center of gravity is left, but it looks like, or seems to be, at least at this point, that I am better grounded on the right. So that's why it's very confusing for me right now. But for my body specifically, but grounding is also super, super important. So it's something I'm going to continue to watch. And so I'm going to take these exercises for like this first week or so, really focus on just doing them correctly, really making sure I'm focusing on my breathing. Then I'm going to take these assessments again, and I'm for sure going to look at grounding again and see if some of those things have shifted. So I told you where we start with kind of those bigger muscles, the ones that are closer to the surface of the body first, because those are the ones more than likely keeping me most locked up. And so as we get some movement, some better movement in those areas, then we can take a look and see if, once I have that movement, if my body doesn't kind of more naturally make a little bit more sense, if that makes sense. You'll start to kind of see sometimes that, like, that turning or that weight or that, the lean, you might see that just kind of make more sense head to toe once these more locked up areas kind of let go. And so I'm interested to see how that influences the grounding especially. So I wanted to mention it because it is definitely something I'm going to put a lot of focus on with my clients as I'm working with them one-on-one. But it's something that for me doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my body, so I didn't want to go into it too much right here today. So I already mentioned the anterior pelvic tilt and kind of that shape that creates. But another thing that I have going on is, in addition to that, whether it's a strategy to be able to rotate my legs, because it's difficult to rotate out, to externally rotate whenever you are in that kind of forward, that pelvis tilted forward position. So it could be a strategy to try to do that. It could be a breathing strategy. It could be for a number of things. But I'm tilted forward, but then my glutes in the back are kind of gripping, almost like it's trying to pull me back, but not in a healthy way. And so I'm gripping back there, have a lot of kind of tension there, and need to really open up that space. That's actually really going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to address first, is to get that kind of pelvis space in there so that I can move better in my pelvis. And then also to address the breathing strategies, a little bit of compression in the front of my rib cage, where, I talked about that 360 expansion that I am not getting right now, to try to open up the front rib cage, the back of the rib cage as well, and really just be able to breathe. That's a really huge piece to start with, for sure. And so first steps here: find better breathing, find space in those larger muscles that I talked about, where that are keeping me stuck bilaterally, like all the way across, not just on my right side or just my left, but like my entire chest, my entire back, my entire pelvis. So we're going to address those first, then we'll look at those differences left to right, once those bigger muscles have kind of let go. So I want to show you just a picture kind of these different exercises that I'm going to do. And if you want to see like a walkthrough of these, or see how I'm actually doing them, or even just how I'm actually incorporating them into my life, because several of these are laying on the floor, and we know with children that's doesn't always go the way you want it to. The purpose of these exercises, you're supposed to be relaxed. You're supposed to be like able to kind of quiet your nervous system, and it's gonna be interesting figuring out how to do that with little ones. But the beautiful thing about it is I'm only going to be doing 2 to 3 of these at a time, and so it's not like it takes a ton of time. It really does not, which is the beautiful thing about this. So these are just a few of the exercises that I'm going to be doing. This is a lateral decompression, and this is so cool because it uses the ground and that kettlebell there to kind of almost pull the tops of the hips, the tops of the pelvis towards each other, and open up that space in the back. So that's what I was talking about, just kind of opening up the pelvis, getting more space back there, and you just sitting here and breathing. And so definitely very much a breathing drill. That's super helpful with getting that air properly, helping me to breathe without using my neck, because I definitely do that. Breathe more through my nose instead of through my mouth, because I definitely do that as well. And so that is a really good exercise for that. This one is, again, just very much about opening up the back of the pelvis. I'm definitely excited to add this into my routine because I think it's going to be super helpful. A lot of these are just tiny little movements or even just positions, and it does amazing things for being able to tell your body that you're safe, for being able to open up space in a just in a way where you're calming your nervous system. Like I said, just telling your body you're safe. And I love that. The supine chest opener, this is going to help me to really be able to breathe properly. It's going to help with that compression in the chest and like opening up the front of the chest, but it's also really just going to help me breathe. And then this last one is a drill that is going to help with the grounding, where my feet are kind of like not totally sure what's going on right now. And so I will be adding this one on as well, but I'm going to start with these other ones that are really focused on breathing and opening up the back of the pelvis to start with. And then I'm going to layer on more from there. But the idea is not that I'm doing 6 different exercises in a day or more. It's more of a progression. So I'm going to focus on these first, and then I will kind of replace or progress them as I go, in order to, like I said, once I address those big muscles, then I can start to address the right left kind of issues there, the discrepancies between those sides, and really see if we can't unlock some more movement for my body. I'm so excited about it, and I cannot wait to dive in. So if you have any questions about anything that I shared, if you are curious about why I did any of these things that I did, or how how I saw what I did, I would love to answer those in my next video. So just leave a comment, let me know, or we can chat more on Instagram. It's at Tired Mama Training, and I will see you next time.